Hello! We have 3 stories today. I hope you enjoyed my last video as some of the most famous stories of all time because, like them, today's first story is an intriguing real-life thriller as a child psychologist gets some unsettling news about a former patient in story 1. About 20 years ago, I was working as a child psychologist in a small town and had a 6-year-old patient referred to me for mandatory counseling by the school. Although I only worked with her for a few sessions, and this was years ago, she was probably the child who disturbed me the most to this day. She was originally referred for graphic pictures she drew in class of people being maimed or killed. She did not have exposure to violence or violent media at home, so these were entirely the product of her imagination. She was also somehow involved in an incident where another child was seriously hurt under unclear circumstances. But she could not be concretely tied to what happened. I found out that she had vivid fantasies of cutting living things open and at times had acted out these fantasies on small animals. She told me freely, like she was proud of it. I think we all know where this is going. Serial killer in the making alert. She also tested at a college reading level at 6 years old. There were multiple times where she would say things that even took me a second to follow. That suggested both a quickness and a grasp of double meaning and nuance that would be considered far beyond what was developmentally expected for her age. The parents were white-collar immigrants in a stable and supportive household, but there was clearly some cultural barrier. They kept saying she was good because she was smart and tested high. They didn't seem to understand when I tried to explain that being good academically and being well-behaved or moral were not the same thing. Most disturbingly, I noticed they were intentionally or unintentionally teaching her masking behaviors to conceal these impulses, or to get what she wanted by manipulating others rather than putting herself at risk without actually addressing the underlying problem. It becomes very hard to intervene on children who have learned these behaviors because they keep escalating while flying under the radar, at least until they do something they can no longer get away with as older teens or adults and the legal system comes down on them. I strongly recommended both to the parents and the school that they should pursue further and more intensive counseling for their daughter than I could provide. At the time, I had a colleague who was piloting an inpatient program for intervening early on younger children with extremely destructive impulses. I gave them the contact info for him. The parents did not seem open to this at all and abruptly moved away before we had finished our sessions. A couple years later, I also moved to a new city, but I always wondered what happened to her, fearing she had ended up in juvenile hall or worse, prison. Very recently, I caught up with some old colleagues and learned through happenstance that she was now in training to become a surgeon at an elite East Coast institution. When I found this out, I felt an immediate visceral chill go through me. Someone in that position of trust with that level of intelligence and training has the potential to do a lot of harm, which might not be discovered for years, if ever. Part of me, I am ashamed to admit, even felt that this was a worse outcome. I feel guilty for having these feelings at all because they do not accord with my values or training as a professional. I strongly believe people are not at fault for their mental health problems or personality disorders. Such people are far more likely to become the victims of crimes than perpetrators, and I certainly do not believe anyone should be punished or precluded from certain careers. At least not because of a perceived predisposition to crime, particularly as a child. I have also had to work hard to undo a lot of the biases that my professors passed on to me in graduate school decades ago that are not based in evidence. Such as, some people are born psychopaths, a term we no longer use, and are destined to hurt people. I want with every fiber of my being to believe that she received treatment and eventually realized a calling to help people. I want to believe that, but there's a feeling I can't quite escape. Edit. I want to clarify that this post is more about me getting my knee-jerk feelings and biases I feel are inappropriate and didn't realize were in me off my chest than about my patient who I haven't known for 20 years. I'm very familiar with HIPAA, including how to spell it, and nothing here is identifying. I posted anonymously because I can't talk to anyone I know about this, since the additional information about who I am and where I worked could be identifying. I certainly cannot and will not try to interfere with her career as one that is entirely inconsistent with my values and not the kind of professional I want to be. That's actually a perfect example of the paternalistic old generation thinking I mentioned I have had to get out of. Mental health professionals should use our knowledge to make decisions about other people's lives. I had a professor in grad school who frequently bragged that multinational corporations would hire him as a consultant to assess if employees were psychologically suitable for their roles or if they should be terminated, not hired, denied promotion. It later emerged that none of the methodology he was using was sound or evidence-based. 2. What am I supposed to say? Hey, medical board, your trainee was my patient. Here is some information from when she was 6. The only possible outcome from that would be a referral to my own board for a violation of patient confidentiality and unprofessional conduct. In the comments, the refrigerator said, honestly, checks out from what I know of surgeons. That profession has a higher rate of psychopaths than most others. It's simultaneously a status symbol, and they also don't have to really interact with patients that much. Hannah Barbarian said, aw, she's found her creative outlet. Zesty Close Son added, I laughed and am also horrified at this comment. Oh, goodness. This reminds me of the Dr. Death podcast presented by Wondery. If you haven't already checked them out, I highly recommend. Granted, I only listen to the free seasons. OP's previous patient was obviously a serial killer in the making, and as one of the comments points out, and I can verify based on all the anecdotal pieces of information in my brain, that it seems totally plausible that a psychopath, I still use the term, would be in heaven as a surgeon. I had no idea the degree to which medical malpractice was covered up in the States. It is crazy. I mean, if you're a super smart psychopath, surgeon is really the way to go. Just saying. Our second story keeps us on the theme with another mystery, but family drama gets folded in. Can you imagine waking up one day next to your life's love only to look straight into unrecognizing, cold eyes and be asked, who are you? Well, you don't have to imagine it because we have story 2. I have been with my husband Josh since we were seniors in high school. We broke up shortly after high school graduation, but got back together a year afterwards. We overcame long distance, educational and job difficulties, unplanned pregnancies, medical issues, everything. He is my first everything, and I cannot imagine life without him. But now, I have to get used to it. 2 months ago, Josh woke up next to me, shocked. He asked what I was doing on his chest and who I was. He likes to sometimes wake me up saying, hey, who's this beautiful lady on my chest? But this was different, and he wouldn't let me touch him. He started demanding to know where he was and where a woman named Lisa was. I was confused and scared, to say the least. I tried to explain that I'm his wife and that he's home safe. Josh yelled he would have never married me in a million years. He started running around our house looking at photos of us and out of windows. He refused to let me get too close, so I called his mom and she talked to him on his phone. He freaked out that I knew his passcode and he started wailing about what was going on. I called his therapist and he was taken to the hospital. He was put on 5150 and I had his mom come take him when it was up. When he got home a week later, he accepted that I was his wife but kept saying us being together was wrong. He didn't go to work for a bit and I noticed he was obsessively searching for a woman named Lisa, who went to a college he'd turned down for me. I have never seen this woman and I wondered if he possibly had an affair in the past. I found messages to a number from him a week later where he begged Lisa to talk to him, but she said she had no idea who he was. The phone wasn't public, so he must have it memorized. I asked his mom about it, and she asked him, to which he said, she's the love of my life. He stopped and was so distraught he tried to take his own life. He went back to the facility and was evaluated again. I was given options, but I wanted him home. So he was prescribed some medication. His sister stayed with us until he seemed stable. But Josh would act so coldly towards me, asking questions about why we got back together and how upset he was that we were. When we broke up originally, I cursed him out for 3 hours straight and later found out he had made a move on the girl he told me not to worry about. He would say he didn't know how he could love me again after all I said. He refused to do chores and would stay out into the night for hours. Over a month ago, he came to me and asked for a divorce. He said when he told me I should find someone better after high school, I should have done that because he can't bring himself to love me. How can I be with someone who's so obviously embarrassed to be with the old me? I told him he's not that insecure little boy anymore, and he was the love of my life. He had been publicly embarrassed years ago in regards to me. He used to be insecure that I was too good for him and that everyone knew that. My father, after meeting him, told me he was a loser. But I reminded Josh I chose him because I love him. I told him we moved past that and I thought we were good. He didn't believe me and said he couldn't imagine being happy with me. He left that night and was fine coming to get his things to move in with his sister. He looks at me with nothing but apathy and it hurts. His sister urged him to try again, and he came back and I told him I don't want to throw away 10 years together over a mental break. We were both thriving career-wise and had virtually no issues up to this point. We were renovating this very house together. He agreed to try and we were fine for more than a month. It was like trying to date him again, but everything seemed to be moving in a positive direction. We even slept together, and I thought that was proof things were great. He was so caring and attentive, like I remembered. So I figured he was getting there. He initiated it and wouldn't stop telling me how beautiful I was, like he remembered. Then, 3 nights ago happened. I come home from work to find Josh sitting quietly at the kitchen table drinking. He never does that. He had been waiting for me and then slammed divorce papers and his phone onto the table. His phone was open to text messages with explicit photos and mentioning of a night together with a woman named Lisa. Not the same one, but apparently someone he met on Tinder. I will never forget the venom in his voice when he said, "Now will you divorce me?" I went to our room and locked the door and just cried. I heard him leave and his sister took him away. She texted me an apology and said she's turning him back into the facility, but I told her to just take him and I'll sign the papers, but not to tell him I was. I'm floored. My mother and brother are flying to help me with this. Everyone is shocked, and I cannot fathom what has happened. We had been trying for a baby, too. I'm seeing if I miss my period because we did it unprotected, but now I wonder if I should get tested for STDs, too. In the comments, Slytherin said, "Wait, so did he make the whole forgetting you thing up, or is he genuinely going through a mental episode?" OP replied, "I think a mental episode?" Sprinkledinkle said, "This kind of sounds like frontal lobe dementia. A coworker went through something like this with her husband of decades and 4 grown children. All of a sudden, she was the enemy and their entire lives were upended. I'm sorry you're going through this, whatever it may be." OP, this is devastating. I too am so sorry you're going through this. Safety first, you should definitely get yourself tested. And not to rub salt on a wound, but maybe it is best to move on. I mean, if your husband is now super mean, a bit of a psychopath, and vindictive for what? You wanting to be with him like that's a thing? Then it really is best for you to move on. I wish you all the best as you do so. Our third story ends the thriller theme we've been on with something twisted turned sweet for a happy ending. Our last story comes from Confessions, where a man admits he has never loved his wife and married her because he owed her money. What a monster? Maybe. In story 3. My time to shine, I guess. So, growing up, I was the usual jerk. My dad left me when I was around 6. My mom was an alcoholic and abusive, and I basically was living in a dump with her. Life sucked like absolute trash. The best part was going to school. No, it was not the teachers. They were absolute trash too. It was my friends who respected me and accepted me for the jerk I am. I enjoyed socializing with them. They made my day. However, they were bullies. Now, I didn't give a second thought about bullying. I knew it happened, but as long as I didn't do it, or was the victim, I was fine. In comes this shy, scared, and nervous-looking girl in middle school. My friends began to group up and bully her for almost a couple of weeks. I didn't care. I wasn't going to take part or be the victim. I just wanted to finish school at the time. The bullying continued for the girl. She would cry, hide, and tried to stay away from school as long as she could. When my friends locked her into a locker once, I stopped them. I guess she used that opportunity to get to know me. When my friends skipped school, she would come and talk to me or sit near me at lunch. She would share her lunch with me since I had nothing. She helped me with my homework, which I had no idea about, and she began to pay me, which I liked. I guess in return, I stopped my friends from getting to her. I owed her that. As years went by, she invited me to dinner with her parents. We would hang out together. She'd pay for everything, which again, I liked. I liked her, but she loved me, if you know what that feels like. As time continued to go by, I got my driver's license at 17. The problem was that a car would cost a lot of money and insurance for a young person like myself was a lot. So I asked her parents for the money, saying I will pay them back. I knew they would say no. They should have said no. Everything would be so different if they did. But they said yes and bought me my very own car. After that moment, I realized that I had to take care of their daughter, at least until I paid them back. I would drive her anywhere, everywhere. We became closer and closer. She was so happy with me and always has a smile on her face when she sees me. It was her that kissed me first. It was her that brought me to her church. It was her that proposed to me. And it was both of us that got married to each other and gave each other our virginity. We've been married for 10 years tomorrow. I still owe her parents for the car and owe my wife all the cash she gave me. I like her, but she loves me so much. I've never cheated on her or ever thought about it. Our lives are perfect. But I wish I could let her know that I don't love her the way she loves me. To conclude, I work a minimum wage job and my wife is a teacher. We don't have kids. She loves me so much. But if I could take it all back, I would. This is my confession. Feel free to ask any questions. Some notable comments. I don't know, man. It sounds like you do love her. I mean, you truly love her in the most important ways. You protected her when she needed it. You stuck with her for years through everything. She supported you in your time of need as well, and her family has been very supportive of you, it seems, as well. All of these things are a great foundation for a relationship. Our society has some pretty messed up myths regarding love that screw up our perceptions. We expect love to be this mystical feeling that is always there, like some movie. Here are some of the most common myths. Myth 1. Love is a feeling. If you're not feeling love, then you don't really love your partner. Myth 2. If you have to question whether or not you love your partner, you obviously don't love him or her, and it's time to walk away. Myth 3. You should just know that it's right. If you don't have that feeling of rightness, then it's clearly not right. Myth 4. You should feel head over heels in love, which means butterflies and fireworks. Myth 5. Your partner should make you feel alive, whole, and fulfilled. All of these myths screw us up if we buy into them. Sure, there might be some of these things in a relationship, but there is far more to a long-term relationship than any of that. Love is sticking around when your own ego says you don't want to. Love is being there when you really are too tired to be there. You were a jerk from an abusive home with an alcoholic mother, and this woman bonded with you and supported you. She was a bullying victim who needed a hero, and you stepped up. Sounds like a great foundation for a relationship if you ask me. I don't know if you could find anything better, to be honest. Remember. Comment 2. I'm not going to comment about the relationship or love as I've never been in a long-term relationship, but I will say money only goes so far, and what you've done for her, as it is worth well more than $10,000. Comment 3. You love her. You just have some other mystical concept of love that you don't think you have. Love is something that grows over time if it's nurtured. Be each other's best friend. Be happy. Update. Today, I took my wife out to lunch for our anniversary. When I saw her cute face, I immediately felt different. This was due to the fact that my thread blew up with lots of advice yesterday night. I want to thank you guys and girls. You know who you are. You made me think of my wife differently today. It was the first time that I actually told her I loved her without forcing myself to say it. At first, I muttered it under my breath and my wife asked what I said. I tried a second time and again, I couldn't speak up. Then I said it loud for the third time. My wife smiled and her face turned all pink. We remained quiet for a little while until she began to ask me about my day. We talked for a little while before we visited her parents. I told her parents that I would start paying them back for the car they had bought me when I was in my teens. They told me not to worry about it, that they were happy that I remember and visit them even though it wasn't their anniversary. We talked for a couple of hours. My wife and I returned home. It was then that I opened Internet Explorer and asked my wife to look at my thread. We sat down together and she read it. She began to cry while reading it and hugged me so tight. The last time I saw her cry was on our wedding night, and it was tears of joy, according to her. I told her that I realized that I was treating her unfairly. I told her I wanted to be more loving towards her. I told her I loved her, and she was my life. She told me that I was her life, that I saved her from killing herself, and that without me, she wouldn't be happy. At this point, I was crying. My wife is currently sleeping. To conclude, I want to thank you all again for the advice. For the people that told me to pay back my debts and leave her, I have realized that I will stick by my wife till death do us part like I had promised her 10 years ago. She is my life right now, and I don't want to have anyone by my side but her. In the comments, the Riker maneuver said, "This guy was in love the entire time. He just didn't know it because he grew up without love in his life and had no frame of reference. He, like many others, assumed love was like what you see in movies, which it's not." Diligent Brick said, "Love really is a choice and an action. Good for him for figuring that out." OP, I'm not sure I would have gone the route of sharing the thread with my wife. That was a bit risky. But you clearly have one amazing woman for a life partner. Your life could have gone down a completely different road with that family background. And it sounds like you both saved one another from yourselves. That's pretty special. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.